Morning, three ladies and a gentleman, except for staff. Glad y'all are here. I want to welcome everyone to the special called meeting of the Temple City Council for April 6, 2022. Currently, it is 10 a.m. And I don't guess there's any public comments today. I don't see anyone. So let's just dive right in. Our first item is the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing an amendment and adopting the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 financing and project plans to align with master plans, which includes adjusting bond proceeds, future debt service, operating expenditures, and public improvements for the years 2022 through 2062. Ms. Bernard?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The financing plan amendment before you today adjusts the TERS revenue bond issue that we have planned for 2022. We removed some projects based on project readiness, which includes Avenue C MLK to 24th Street, and then TISD Travis Middle School project. Added some projects for construction, the airport taxiway extension, drainage, roadway, and utility improvements at the airport, a water line extension in the North Industrial Park, a wastewater extension in the North Industrial Park, and then adjustments for updated estimated project cost, or OPCs. We also added design and right-of-way dollars for the Southeast Temple water supply projects, Lorraine Drive roadway extension completion, and then added a contingency.
Fiscal contingency?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I thought.
And just to look at the numbers, on December 14th, the financing plan amendment, we had project proceeds from the bonds of 73.3 million. We've adjusted that to 80 million for a net increase of total bond of 6.753700. And as you can see on the far right column, it shows where we removed for Avenue C, added 2.4 million for the 920 plane, 3 million gallon elevated storage tank and transmission main. The 2.2 million for Travis Middle School, added 3.250 for the airport improvements. And then you can see the projects at the bottom, the 2.5 for the water line, 1.2 for the wastewater extension, and then design and right away, those numbers, 2.9 for the Southeast Temple water supply projects, and the right away is close to 1.9. And then the additional right away, I'm getting my numbers mixed up here. Design for Lorraine Drive of 445,000 and the contingency of 1.248. We will also be funding a reserve from proceeds, and that based on the adjusted bond proceeds that was adjusted 133,000 estimated. Any questions on that slide? It'd be shifted. It's taken out now, but it will not be ready for construction till maybe next summer. So that's why we utilize those funds for other project readiness. Next slide, please. I know this is a high level view of the project map, but you can see pretty much all over the city. The bottom is the design for the Southeast Temple waterline projects. You can see a lot up in the North Industrial Park. Next slide, please. And just looking at our bond capacity and how we calculate that, our goal is internal policy practice is to try to maintain a 2x coverage. With this issue, we are doing a 25-year bond versus a 20-year bond. And the first 2 years of that amortization schedule, it's interest plus some principal, but not the full straight line principal. And then that picks up in 2025 to FY 2025 to straight line, as you see the revenues begin to increase from 25.6 million to 33.6 million. Yes, and there's also, as we all know, there's some movement in interest rates in the last few months, and it was recommended by our Dan Wedmiller with our FA to go to the 25 just to keep that in line.
Just knowing rates were moving, but
Yes.
not having a rate for this one.
Right.
It will not have a prepayment penalty.
No, and he can add call features, and he will in the.
Well, as these revenue numbers come in, if they come in as projection, there's the resources to knock this note down.
Yes. Also with these, as the zone, and we've talked about the concentration of revenues, which we're seeing that being less concentrated. We will have the opportunity in the future we could call the bonds, refund them, and eliminate this reserve account, which is our utility fund. We have a springing reserve. We don't have to fund it unless our times coverage falls to a certain level. And eventually that's what we want to do with the TERS revenue bonds, is get to that point where we don't have to set aside the big reserve unless our coverage levels fall. Next slide, please. Just the timeline of our, for the bond issue. This month, we'll be getting ready for the bond rating package, or bond rating presentation, and getting all the offering documents together. We're planning on Thursday, May 19th, coming to you for consideration, either to award the sale of the bonds or a delegation ordinance for Brent or I to manage the sale. And if we do the delegation, and I think we'll lean toward that, that gives us the flexibility. If there's some sudden market change, we can adjust and better manage that sale. And then the goal is to actually close on the bonds June 9th. Next slide, please. Also in this amendment is, it includes the allocation to reimburse infrastructure improvements to Temple Green Data LLC. They're scheduled for your consideration tomorrow. And that amount is reimbursing a total of $4.8 million in infrastructure improvements, and that to be paid over 3 years at $1.6 million. And based on the current timeline, that reimbursement would begin in FY 2024. Next slide, please. Also included in the amendment is some additional funding in FY 2023 for art installation at the Avenue U roundabout. Some additional funding related to dry utility relocates in the MLK festival fields. And then we also have additional funding for corridor improvements associated with the EDA for H5B3, which is a 20% match grant. And the amount being funded by the reinvestment zone is $500,000. I think I had the address wrong on one of those. And it's the redevelopment of 8th South 4th Street, and then some redevelopment of Main Street, South Main Street. Next slide. Just looking at the reinvestment zone, this is the master plan project funding looking in 2022. Lots of projects going on, a total of $144 million worth of projects funded. This shows by what the parks they're in, the industrial park, 38.4 million, downtown 46.6 million, and the outer loop 39 million. And then in 23, 24, we'll still be delivering some of these projects, I'm sure in 23 and 24, but the amounts don't ramp back up again until 2025. Next slide, please. And again, just showing that in a pie chart, You've got nearly equal projects in downtown, outer loop, and the industrial park. And just a summary of the source and use of funds. Our policy practices to keep the available fund balance around 2 million. And you see, we do that through the next 5 years. It does jump up in 23 and 4, but that's saving for the next year's allocation to some projects. Next slide, please. Within your council packet, you do have the financing plan, the summary financing plan with detailed project plan, and then the master plan project funding schedule of 22 through 2026. And that concludes my presentation on the amendment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Counselor, any questions for Tracy?
I'd like to go back to the slide that showed the map with the projects laid out on it. Yeah, that one right there. I just want to look at it for a second.
That includes the whole $80 million worth of projects, that project map.
Smallest print possible to mankind.
It was for a high level 30,000. I can print it.
If
in
you
a
were
big
any
map.
more, if you were any more than a foot and a half away, it's too far away, right? I don't have any questions about it. I just wanted to refresh my memory. Thank you.
Counselor, anything else? All right, very good. This item is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may do so. We ask that you step to the podium or raise your hand on the, nothing on the virtual platform. All right. Well, very good. Before we do take a vote, first I need to close the public hearing. So I'll close that now. And before we entertain a motion to approve, I just want to reiterate that council wants staff to focus on the design and right-of-way acquisition for the North Industrial Park water and wastewater line projects, and bring the project back to council for a workshop discussion before putting any of the construction portion of these projects out to bid. Okay, and that's for the North Industrial water and wastewater project. So just again, I appreciate staff and the RZ and all the work they've done for this item. I know it's easy to, everything gets boiled down into 2 or 3, or 5 slides, but that is a lot of man hours. So thank you all for everyone that's worked on this. And
Mr. Mayor, question, clarification on that.
yes, sir.
That is just for the app, just for the construction to come back to us. Should it come back to us to go forward with the planning and the right-of-way acquisition portion of it as well? Just for a review of the whole,
Sure.
all the steps involved.
I think that I'm comfortable with leaving that with staff. I mean, obviously keeping us up to speed, but as far as running it back by us for any type of approval or discussion, unless that's something that you would like to add. So what we're approving here is, based on the statement that I made, is right-of-way acquisition
Right.
and paying for the design of the project so that it is, we pride ourselves on shovel-ready sites. And in this case, it'll be sitting on the shelf, ready to make it a shovel-ready site.
I also wanted to just mention that the design contracts would come forward to council for approval. So you can also discuss it at that time if desired.
That addresses it. Thank you very
Is that-
much.
is
I'm
that
fine
good enough?
with it. Yeah.
Council, any other discussion before we move on for a vote? All right, very good. Then at this time, I will entertain a motion for approval on item number 1 on today's agenda.
So I'll make a motion to approve item 1, including mayor's language.
We have a motion by Councilmember Walker. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, if you would please cast your vote. Item number 1 on today's agenda passes 5 votes to 0. There being nothing else, then I will adjourn this meeting and thank you all for attending.